All right, so today we're diving into a world that's raw, honest, and about as far from a typical startup fairy tale as you can get.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. We're taking The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz and really dissecting his journey from engineer to entrepreneur to VC. He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
That's what makes his perspective so valuable. He's not just glorifying the wins, he's revealing the struggles, the brutal realities of building something from scratch.
Absolutely. And he doesn't just talk about it, he lived it. From Netscape to LoudCloud, Horowitz was in the trenches, making decisions with huge consequences. But before we get to all that, let's rewind back to his childhood in Berkeley.
Setting the stage. I like it.
There's this anecdote about a red wagon, a moral dilemma, that really sheds light on his early influences.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine this. Young Ben, growing up in Berkeley, a place known for its progressive values, is dared by a friend to essentially steal a red wagon from another kid. And to make matters worse, the dare involves using, well, let's just say, some pretty awful language.
Wow. So even in a place like Berkeley, these complex social dynamics were playing out. It's a stark reminder that real life is rarely black and white.
Exactly. So what did young Ben do? Faced with this moral challenge, he chose to trust his gut, his own sense of right and wrong.
It's a defining moment shaping his moral compass early on. And as we'll see, that strong moral compass becomes crucial later in his career when he's faced with tough decisions as a CEO.
Because those decisions aren't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, they impact real people's lives.
For sure. But for now, let's jump ahead to Horowitz's time at Netscape. The dawn of the internet, the dot-com boom. Talk about a wild ride.
It was like the Wild West of tech. The energy, the pace of innovation, it must have been incredible.
It was, but just like the Wild West, there were exhilarating highs and crushing lows. Horowitz talks about receiving this scathing email from Mark Andreessen, his co-founder at Netscape.
Oh, I bet that stung.
It gets even more interesting. This email, criticizing his performance, arrived on the very same day that Andreessen was featured on the cover of Time magazine.
Talk about a contrast. 1 minute you're on top of the world, the next.
You're getting a reality check. It perfectly illustrates that roller coaster nature of startup life.
So what did that experience teach him? Because it seems like a crash course in resilience, in navigating a world that's constantly changing.
It was. And these lessons, as we'll see, would prove invaluable as he takes on his next big challenge, LoudCloud.
From Netscape, Horowitz dives headfirst into his next venture, LoudCloud. It's the classic startup story, big dreams, a promising IPO, and then, bam, the dot-com bubble bursts.
Yeah, the year 2000. It was a brutal time for anyone in tech.
Imagine pouring everything into your company, finally going public, and then suddenly the market just collapses.
It's like the rug being pulled out from under you. And for Horowitz, it wasn't just about the business, it was about people. He talks about the agonizing decision to lay off employees, how deeply it affected him.
That's got to be one of the toughest parts of leadership, making those kinds of calls. So how do you navigate that crisis?
He emphasizes facing reality head on, even when it's brutal. There's this chilling analogy he uses about a doctor telling a younger colleague that a patient is essentially dead, even though he doesn't know it yet.
Wow, that's a heavy comparison. How does that apply to, running a company?
It reflects a conversation he had with his mentor, Bill Campbell, about the future of LoudCloud. Campbell was basically saying, look, it's over. You just haven't accepted it yet.
So you're Horowitz, you're told your company's essentially a dead man walking. What do you do?
He had to scramble.
Yeah.
LoudCloud desperately needed a $50 million PIPE, a private investment in public equity.
The lifeline.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. Horowitz is simultaneously realizing they might need to overhaul their entire business model. So imagine trying to convince investors to give you $50 million while you're questioning the very foundation of your company.
Must felt like being caught in a riptide. So did they pull it off? Did they get the funding?
It was down to the wire. Remember, this is the dot-com crash no one wants to invest. But then, in a turn of events that feels almost cinematic, Horowitz gets a call. His father-in-law, John Wiley, had been working behind the scenes.
Okay, this is it. The moment of truth.
Wiley told him, we have a lead investor. And it's not just anyone, it's Herb Allen, Wall Street legend.
Talk about a saving grace.
It wasn't that simple, though. This deal came with conditions. Giving up a chunk of the company, diluting existing shareholders. It was a tough pill to swallow, but it was survival.
Sometimes the toughest decisions are the ones you have to make, right? But even with the investment, they still had a long road ahead.
Oh, absolutely. They dodged a bullet, but they couldn't keep doing things the same way. This is where adaptability becomes key. They had to transform LoudCloud, and that's how Opsware was born.
So they've rebranded as Opsware, secured that financial lifeline. You'd think they'd get a moment to catch their breath, right?
You'd think so, but that's not exactly Ben Horowitz's style, is it? Pivoting a company, it's not like flipping a switch. It takes serious grit,
You're
determination.
building the plane while you're still flying it.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, their biggest customer, EDS, we're talking 90% of their revenue here, threatened to bail.
Oh, wow. That's a sinking feeling. Can you imagine being in that room?
Horowitz describes it as a true do-or-die situation. They had 60 days to save the EDS account or face the very real possibility of Opsware going under.
That's barely any time at all. What did they do?
They went into overdrive, total scramble mode. Horowitz puts together this team, led by Jason Rosenthal and Anthony Wright, to tackle this head-on. Rosenthal's task: fix the technical issues plaguing the EDS relationship.
Okay, damage control. Makes sense.
Right, but then there's Wright. His role was to find what Horowitz calls exciting value. Give EDS a reason to stay beyond just fixing what was broken.
So not just putting out fires, but wowing them with something new.
Exactly. And Wright was the guy for this. Horowitz calls him the greatest big deal person he'd ever met. Through observation, bit of detective work even, Wright uncovers this detail about their main contact at EDS, a guy named Frank.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What about Frank?
Turns out Frank absolutely loathed his job, despised it, to the point where he'd book flights with the longest layovers just to spend more time in airport bars.
Wow. Talk about a cry for help.
Right.
But how does that help Opsware?
This tiny detail, it was a gold mine for Wright. See, it revealed that EDS's problems went beyond just technical glitches. They were drowning in complexity. Their entire IT infrastructure was a mess, and they desperately needed a solution.
So Opsware's challenge wasn't just about their product. It was understanding the bigger picture, EDS's real pain point.
Exactly. And that's what leads them to Tangram. This company specialized in managing those huge, complex IT environments, the kind EDS was struggling with.
Light bulb moment. So they acquired Tangram.
They did. It was a big move, but it was the exciting value they needed to offer. Not only did it solve the immediate technical issues, but it showed EDS that Opsware got them, understood their needs.
Did it work?
It did. EDS account was saved. Tangram acquisition gave Opsware the boost it needed to expand their offerings. But, as you might expect with Horowitz, the journey wasn't over.
Because of course not. There's always another challenge around the corner in this business.
Right on cue, this new competitor pops up. Blade Logic. Gaining market share, their product was getting rave reviews. Opsware's stock takes a hit.
Back to square one, it seems.
Another make-or-break moment. Horowitz calls them one-bullet moments. He had to rally his team. Many were burnt out from years of fighting just to survive and inspire them to create a product that would blow Blade Logic away.
So how did he do it?
He gives this really raw, honest speech to his engineers, acknowledges their exhaustion, their fears, and then challenges them. Dig deep, give it everything for the next 6 months, build a product that dominates. They did. Through sheer will, relentless focus, Opsware not only caught up to Blade Logic, they surpassed them. That company, once on the brink of collapse, was eventually acquired by Hewlett-Packard for $1.65 billion.
Wow. From that childhood moral dilemma to the roller coaster of Silicon Valley, Ben Horowitz's story is really something. A testament to resilience, to adapting, never giving up.
It's proof that success isn't a straight line, right? It's about learning from those mistakes, embracing the tough times, and holding on to your vision.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the hard thing about hard things, there's one final thought from Horowitz that sticks with me. He says, the hard thing isn't dreaming big, it's what you do when that dream turns into a nightmare.
Powerful stuff.
So, as you navigate your own challenges, remember, the real test of leadership isn't how you handle the wins, it's how you persevere when things get tough.
Think about your own one-bullet moments, those defining challenges. What did they teach you? That's something worth reflecting on.